let's go around the room really quickly so we catch each other's names. I'm Mike.
I'm Emily. I'm Bea.
Steve.
Jim.
Peter.
Alex.
Yulia.
Charles.
And Harry.
Hi, Harry. Thanks all for coming. It's a beautiful soaring day. I'm glad you gave up flying for this. It's early in the season, and one of the reasons that we wanted to do this is to change it back to a soaring club. It's always been a soaring club, but lately it's become more gliding than soaring. And we do have a lot of private owners that will go up, rig, disappear, come back, share some stories, and leave. When we're instructing, we try and teach you guys by osmosis. This used to be part of the ground school. It's not in the ground school that's offered now. So there is a gap. And so what we're trying to do is fill in that gap. Now, some of this stuff is recap. Some of this stuff is like, oh, wow, I never thought of that before. There is some good experience in the room. Charles has 3,000 plus hours. He's just fresh back from Florida. An experienced cross-country and competition pilot. You have 3 diamonds?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 diamonds. So he's done a 500-kilometer task. He's done a 300-kilometer closed triangle, and he's got an altitude gain of more than 15,000 feet, but 5,000 meters.
30,500 feet it was on the altimeter.
Yeah. No, you're just guesstimating, yeah. But that's a lot of experience. And Jim is pretty close as well, and he's been learning from Carrie, and you're well within your own right to pat yourself on the back too, because the stuff that Jim has done was in a K6 previously. He just got a discus. It's a much sweeter ride, and it lets you get into trouble farther away from the club. That's the beauty of fiberglass. Anyone moving up to the junior, same thing, and then the Jantar, same thing. You'll get into even more trouble farther away from the club. The only thing that the Jantar is going to do is land you out potentially farther away, and on landing, potentially you can be 10 inches closer to the ground than when you took off, because it's retractable. So when you guys are doing the W in the swafts, make sure wheel, water, wind, wheel. Put your right hand out for no purpose, just right hand out. Touch something in the cockpit for the W and start building into muscle memory too. And the 5 hours after release, rope gone. So release, rope gone, right turn, retract, retrim, and then rotate the airfield. Okay, so your 5 hours. Every self-respecting glider pilot does something immediately after release. What do? You find a thermal. Look for lift. What's the easiest way to find lift? Maybe there's another poor bastard struggling to get up. Okay, so if you see they're getting higher than you are, join them. Quick photo credits. Most of these pictures are mine. If they're not, I'll let you know. This is in a K-21, easy to identify because they all have the canopy released. And this is flying over Nagano in Japan. So, a new glider pilot, you guys can thermal somewhat. You have an idea of what the thermals are doing, kind of how they work. You might be able to stay up for an hour. Quick show of hands. Who's been up for at least a half hour? Okay. Who's been up for an hour? More than 2 hours. Okay. More than 5 hours. Okay. More than 7 hours. Okay. So now you know who knows how to use a thermal and abuse thermals. You might have an idea of how to visualize the thermal, but you might still not understand how they work. Very simply, thermals are quick and easy. The sun heats up the ground radiates the heat, air becomes less dense and it rises. That's easy. Thermals need a trigger in order to release. So the air can be stratified and it can be just getting hotter, but unless something triggers the release, it's just going to stay there until it either explodes and goes, or something goes by. And it could be as easy as a tow plane starting its engine, or a car going down the road, or the wind turbines. I'll talk about that in a minute. We prefer a little bit of wind, not high winds, but like 5 kilometers an hour. We're like, oh, this is great. 10 kilometers an hour, this is great. Those are the winds because the winds help to trigger the lift. To visualize these things, don't think of a thermal as a circle. Think of it as a cylinder, okay? And it could be an upside down wedding cake, depends on the shape, depends on what the wind is doing. But visualize your thermal as a cylinder. At certain altitudes, it might sort of duck around a bit because of horizontal gusts and things that are happening at that altitude. But generally, it's a cylinder. The days with average pressure, we see the cumulus clouds. So that's the top, that's showing you the height of condensation, where all that water vapor is coming up in the thermal and then beginning condensation. On blue days where there's a high pressure, there are no clouds. It's blue. You might see a little wisp of haze dome as whatever vapor is present in the air quickly condenses and then just gets absorbed. So you might get lucky and see a haze dome, but that's it. And so we call the high pressure days blue days. High pressure, so we set for our field elevation 1655. Great Lakes, what are you, 840, so this is 846. So obviously you dial in your field elevation, you look at the pressure in the window, and that little pressure in the altimeter window tells you the relative pressure at the field. So if it's 30 point something inches, it's a high pressure day. And it tells you two things. Good luck finding a cloud. The thermals are going to be really strong, but they're going to be very narrow. Okay, those are the two universal truths about high pressure days. So the thermal will launch, and if the wind is coming from this direction, when the thermal launches, it will always have sink on the downwind side. And so you're going to look for lift on the upwind side, the sunny side. As that thermal rises, it's gaining velocity and gaining strength. But if it's too windy, it's going to become disconnected from the source. And a disconnected thermal will eventually dissipate. And so instead of being nice and bright and shiny white, it's going to be gray and raggy and stringy. There is still residual lift underneath. It's not nicely organized. But if you're trying to stretch out something, if you're desperate for lift and you're close to cloud base, well, within, not more than 500 feet closer because of the FR rules, then you might be able to find some still remnants of lift and use them to advantage. At least it's not sink. But again, you're still going to have the cooler sink happening on the other side of it. So the air is warm, heats up, cools, condenses, and it comes back down.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Yeah, when all the heat that is up to evaporate that water originally is released when it condenses, the latent heat of evaporation.
Yeah.
So you will occasionally see clouds that have little, they call them cumulus castellatus. You'll see a thing. That's a cloud working itself, and there's an extra turbocharge there.
Yeah. The other thing too is that just because the water comes out of it doesn't mean that the air is still not going up. So the air is going up, but now it's dry because the air has come out of it. But it's not carrying all that energy and all that heat that it had going up before. As Charles said, a lot of it came out. Above that, you will get ice crystals. So at the very top of cumulus clouds, you might see ice crystals. It might turn into wispies or cirrus across the top. You guys have flown in Condor. You've turned on the thermal assist. Okay, this is what thermal assist looks like. You are going to have to visualize this as you're flying towards a thermal because we don't have thermal assist goggles in the cockpit.
Yeah.
Yes. They haven't stopped trying. They've tried pressure sensors. They've tried infrared. But anyway, but this is what it looks like in Condor with great strong lift and little bits of lift coming up on the sides. And this is just random thermals popping off of whatever field is triggering them. So that's a regular sort of June day. So the trigger in this case is a farmer on a field because as soon as they churn up the ground, it's releasing a lot of heat. That heat wasn't transmitted to the air right above it right away, but because the farmer's mulching it up, that heat's getting released. It forms thermals like you wouldn't believe. So I'm always looking down, where's the farmer in the field? Where's the farmer in the field? If you've flown with me, you know that I'm looking for that and I'll point it out to you. Oh, here it is. On a blue day, it will save your ass. So wind has an effect on thermals. It may cause them to slope, as we talked about. In this case, because it's windy, if you're looking for the lift under here, you think, oh, I'll just find it directly underneath the cloud. It's not there. You have to, again, visualize where's that thermal coming from, where's the cloud, draw an imaginary line between them, and try and insert yourself somewhere back here on the upwind side to catch it. There's nothing more frustrating than trying to circle around in here, which is pretty close to the sink zone, and everyone else is going up and you're going down. That can happen for two reasons. One, you miss the center. The other is you miss the elevator. If it's a disconnected bubble, everyone at the top is still going up, and what's underneath is the cool air that's being fed in from below, so there's not much going on there. It's not always obvious what the source is. It could be a ridge on a hill. It could be, and it's facing the sun. It could be a farmer. It could be a gravel pit, a huge parking lot. If you see this big parking lot and it's got flags, like IKEA flags or something, and they're pointing in, it tells you the air is flowing into that parking lot and up. Great indicator. If there's an airport and it's got two windsogs going at each end and they're pointing towards each other, great, because that thermal is launching from over the
Right, something,
airfield. Yeah.
yeah, but when it is sloped because of the wind, as soon as more than 10 miles, the easiest way to approach it is from downwind or upwind. If you're trying to approach it crosswind, here or here. But if it's downwind or upwind, you're more likely to run into it.
Yeah, that's perfect because I have a slide for that in about 5 minutes. But that foreshadow, good foreshadow. But that's exactly right because it's hard to nail these things from the side unless you've been practicing for the day, and there's a strategy for that. Cloud streets are not connected thermals. Okay, everyone thinks, oh, the wind lining them up, but it's not. It's a different air mass going on, and it's horizontal roll convection. They have defined areas of lift and sink. And across the top of it, you may have atmospheric wave occurring if the upper wind is nearing perpendicular. So it'll be easier to see in a photo or a diagram in a second. But it is possible, if there's wave occurring, that you may have a trough of sink and a slope of wave occurring outside of the street. There'll be good lift underneath the street, but one side may have sink and then the other may have incredible lift. And it was right after spring check rides a few years ago, maiden flight of 6-9er. Marion was up, a few others were up, and we were finding amazing lift. There was streets, but the best lift was just outside the street to the west. And we figured out that there was upper winds and it was starting off this atmospheric wave. And we scooted down to York. We didn't lose, we actually gained height. And yeah, we had to watch our distance from cloud, but we're getting past the bottoms of the clouds as we're cruising. And someone on the radio said to Marion, November 1, is this wave? And he calls, yeah, it is. And so it doesn't take you up that high, but yeah.
Yeah, early in the day, if there's a wind, air is sticky. And so that's what gives us wind gradient. That's why on a windy day, you go put your hand up facing the wind, you'll feel it stronger here down here. So the wind's blowing over the ground, and it's slower down here and faster up here, and it's got to go somewhere. Can't do this. So it does what is like following the seam on a toilet paper roll. It's a spiral.
Yeah.
It falls over, and you get counter-rotating spirals. So early in the day, you will see cloud streets that are formed where it's on the inside of two of those, and it's lifting the air, and it just lifts the air to the condensation level, and it lines up like that. Later in the day, as the thermals develop, it will spread out into hexagons, because that's how they get the greatest distance between them. I have, and I'll make it available, if I'm a fair word, make it available, a presentation by the U.S. Soaring Team's weather guy that shows with photos and graphs and whatnot that illustration and transition. It's got XC104, I think is the name of that thing, and it's worth taking a look at because you get some idea of how to fly early in the day and then transition later in the day from the counter-rotating rolls to the thermals.
Yeah. For you guys, it's gonna hopefully look like this. And you would think that your cloud base looks pretty close to cloud, but, hey Lucas, come on in. But now you can see what a cloud base really is under this street. So that's about 1,000 feet up. Hey, happy birthday. So they go for quite a distance, and as Charles said, there's strong areas of snake, a diagram to show you, and strong areas of lift. So along this street, there will be two primary areas of lift going up at either edge, and you're going to figure out which side is the better one. You're going to sort of jink over here. Is it better over here? Is it better over here? You're always sampling. You're always modeling. What is this doing? What is this doing? What is this doing? You're comparing. And hopefully that sets it up for the next half hour, the next hour. The conditions change all the time. The other thing too is that because of Coriolis effect, whether it's a high or low pressure, the streets are never like dead straight. They always have this sort of curve to them. And so you want to pick the street that's closest to your course line and upwind if possible, because as you're flying along that, your turn point's here, you're drifting back towards the turn point. It's no good flying along this cloud street, because now you've got to double back and hop streets to get back to it. So try and pick the one that's upwind and then come back to it.
And a note of caution on cloud streets, the roll, the counter-rotating rolls, down low, this is the direction of their movement.
Yeah.
It's only up here, but it's there. And then, so, cloud streets get high, stay high.
Yes. You might find, as Charles said already, you might find thermals that have started to develop underneath them. And it's never a win-win all the way along. You might hit patches of sink in the long. If you hit a thermal, take it. Like 1, 2, 3, 1, you're back up, keep going. Sometimes you're going along streets that you're just getting sucked up. And I had one that took me to Owen Sound, which was incredible. And I had to open the spoilers. And now I was flying like this, and I'm doing over 100 knots.
Oh, I hate it when that happens.
I hate it when that happens, but the problem is you're creating all this turbulence, like bang, 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 and you're cinched down, and everything in the cockpit is bumping around because it's turbulent. It's exciting, and you're covering tons of distance, but you're getting thrown around. You come home and you've got bruises. Okay, so, but it's exciting and it's fun. And you also cover a lot of ground quickly because you're not thermaling. I should have called this how not to thermal. Anyway, but you can see the next streets are over here and over here and over here, so they do lay out like that. I think the next one shows a little better.
Mike, in that case, what you described here, why wouldn't you just max out your speed at the top of the...
So you can max out your speed, but then
go as fast as you can to get as far.
You can. The problem is you're going to get close to cloud, so you're going to get sucked up, and you're going to be too high. You're going to blow your VFR minimum. The second is that you now start approaching your maneuvering speed, and so you can't do full control deflections, and then pretty soon you start getting into your VNEs. And so as soon as you get flutter set up, you can get a standing wave and structural failure. So we're always cautious about how fast we're going. Super quick story. Steve Newfield, if you know him from Great Lakes, he's got a brother Theo, who's a world champion and a gliding maven from New Zealand. He was up around 28,000 feet flying a Schleicher 22, is like 25 meter wingspan, huge open ship, and he's flying in wave, zipping along, and he forgot to calculate his true airspeed because it's 1% as you go up every 1,000 feet. And so he's corking along, making great speed, and flutter set in, and the wings blew, and that was it. So he was in a lawn dart, and from 28,000 feet, and he's on oxygen, and he jettisoned the canopy, and he's about to unbuckle and leave, and then he has this rational moment of thought, my bailout bottle's only got 2 minutes of oxygen, so even in free fall, I'm going to black out before I hit 12,000 feet. So he stayed in the lawn dart until he got down to 13,000 feet, and then he left. So we're always cautious about how fly we fast in a street. You can push, you can absolutely push, but watch your speed range. So as soon as you get into the yellow arc, you have to be really sort of tenderfoot on the controls. Some planes have a lower speed range than others, so the Pooch has a low speed range. The Junior has a low speed range. Jantar's just starting to get good. Its VNE is 285 kilometers an hour, which is pretty darn fast. Most of them are dialed down to 260, but I would keep it within 10 to 15% of that. And they do build in a safety factor, but my badge isn't worth it.
What's that in knots?
154 knots. So, okay, so here you can see the streets a lot better. It's not my photograph, but now you can see they're well defined. These are areas of lift, and it's not always uniform. It's sort of stretchy and spotty. In between is sinks, so that's air coming up, spilling over, and going down, and coming back, and going over and coming down. When you want to cross streets, two rules of thought. So one is do it at 30 degrees so you keep your forward momentum going, and the other one is pull off the band-aid, quickly go across at 90 and then hook across. It depends on how bad the sink is between them, but you want to have as much speed as you can when you cross the street so that you blast through the sink. The more time you spend in sinking air, the more altitude you lose. So that's why we always speed up in the sink. It's not just to blow off the sink, it's to get through it and then get back to lift, or at least air that's not going down. So, as Charles said, the next one's going to be clear. You have these horizontal cylinders that are going up and around, and as Charles said, look down here and you can see the air is almost horizontal and only becoming vertical as it comes up here. When you're in a street, you're going to find it could be on one side, it could be on the other. Sometimes the middle is the gold, but it's usually on one of the two sides. So again, figure out which one is cooking a little bit better and ride that one. The thing is, why we have Flarn, and my Udi's also hooked into the Flarn, so is my S10, is I'm cooking along fat, happy, and stupid. Someone else is in that. These are super highways, and so you're going to meet head on, or you're going to overtake, and it's very difficult to see another glider at your altitude or just a little bit below on the horizon. Very hard to see. So when you're flying streets, you're looking out. Glance quickly, look back out, keep looking out, look at your Flarn to see if someone else. Not everyone's flying with Flarn yet, so you've got to keep your lookout. You're looking for a little silhouette, a little line with a dot in the middle. Sometimes there's birds of prey up there too. And I was cooking along, and all of a sudden, right under the right wingtip was a red-tailed hawk, because they use them too. Here we are thinking we're the smart ones. The other way that you can see streets is not from the clouds. When you get too high, you lose track of where the clouds are going. But what's showing is the shadows on the ground. So you can look at the shadows and say, oh, great, if I keep flying here, the street's here, or, okay, I have a curve coming up in about 5 minutes. Okay. When you're starting to fly like this, you're flying 5, 10, 15 minutes ahead of the aircraft. Okay, right now you guys are flying at the moment. What am I doing right now? So part of what we're doing today is to change your thinking a little bit farther down.
Chest sensor.
Eh?
Chest sensor.
Yes. So let's go back to thermals, because streets are great, but thermals are really what we have the most prevalent form of lift here. So some cab aids for you guys, especially the new ones. Speed control, speed reference is absolutely critical. It's critical because you don't want to feel your mistakes from poor flying. So, oh, I sped up, I'm slowing down. If you're feeling and constantly controlling the airplane and correcting what the airplane is doing, you're butchering the thermal and you're not feeling the thermal. What you want, Chuck Yeager used to say, is the most stable gun platform ever, so you can feel what the thermal is doing to you. If you keep your bank angle fairly stable, if you keep your speed fairly stable, then what you feel is the thermal and not you. And maybe there's a horizontal gust that comes in a certain altitude band from, okay, it's a gust. Maybe all of a sudden you get a push and a push over. Well, that was the core of the thermal that you just flew through. There's good lift on both sides, but it really pushed you up, and then now you're down through it again. So, okay, that wasn't my bad flying. That was, sometimes you're flying and all of a sudden you get a horizontal gust that blows across from the back and your airspeed goes to 0, but the horizon didn't change. So you just ride it out for a second until the gust is gone, you've got forward airflow coming into the pitot again. Again, not your flying. It's what the thermal's doing. When you're in a thermal, ideally all you want to do is on flying, and I'm just doing this, I'm keeping the nose on the horizon. If I put in too much rudder, the nose goes down, I start to speed up. As you speed up, the diameter of the circle changes, and now you're flying out of the lift. That's why speed control is important. The other one is, you fly too slowly, the nose goes up, and now you're getting incipience and you're dropping or you're stalling. So again, you're not in control, you're not feeling what the thermal's doing, you're now reacting to your own control. So, or your own maneuvering. So what you have to do is nail your speed. Once you've nailed your speed, all you have to do to make adjustments, bank out, bank back in, bank out, bank back in. Every time you make a bank, you're changing the diameter of the circle. That's what you're banking in and out for. So that's how you make your adjustments. And we'll talk about adjustments in a minute.
Yeah. I will also share one called speed banking yaw, which elaborates on what Mike's been talking about. How, like any river, the strongest current is in the earth center. And so we want to try and fly in as small a circle as we can in the center. And when our wings are level, that's 1 G. When we're at 30-degree angle of bank, it's 1.2 G. So the plane weighs a little more, the sink rate's a little higher. But you're flying a circle. At 45 degrees, it goes up to 1.4 Gs. Little heavier yet again, but still not bad. At 60 degrees, it goes up to 2 Gs. Whoa, now you're paying more than you're getting. So the optimal angle of bank, on average, is 45-degree angle. And if you know what, you've seen the polar speed curve, where the stall speed starts, sort of an eyebrow-shaped thing, looks like that.
We'll get to it in a little bit,
Yeah. You don't want to fly on the back side of the curve. And that curve, those speeds go up too. So whatever your minimum sink speed is, wings level, add 20% at 45-degree angle of bank. And that's your minimum sink speed at 45. So by and large, it'll be 45 at about 45 to 50 knots.
And which just happens to be around the best LD in straight level flight. It's quick and easy. 1.3 times stall is pretty much best LD. It's not across the board, but it's a good guesstimate. It keeps you out of the stall range when you're in the bank. If your glider's coming down 0.5 meter per second, and the thermal's going up 0.5 meter per second, you've got a net 0. You want to get to what Charles said, you want to get to the core because it's going up 4 meters per second, so your net out is 3.5 up. So how do you judge 45 degrees? So you take these two screws on any instrument and you line them up on the horizon, and it's pretty close to 45. So, and then to the right, it's 45, to the left, 45. But that's it. That's 45 degrees. The first time I turned in the Jantar, I didn't know it yet. The first time I turned, oh, geez. Because the canopy rail is like right here. I thought it was going to fall out. It takes a little while to get used to going to 45. And after a while, you don't even think about it. You just say, oh, I'm in a thermal crank. But you look at the speeds. So it's about 54. 54, down towards 50. I don't go below 48. The controls get really mushy. I'm happy between 50 to 55 when I'm thermaling in a Jantar. That's me, my weight, my loading, everything else. Other people are going to be different. If you're dualing the Pooch or the 21, it's going to be different. But that's pretty much where the Jantar is happy. And G-pole, you can see the needle at 45. I'm coming up. I'm well over 1, so I'm about 1.4 4 Gs. Okay, do you thermal left or do you thermal right? Big debate, doesn't matter. Whatever wing went up, it went up for 2 reasons. One, there's lift under that wing, or there's sink down here. Either way, get away from the sink and go towards the lift, and it's that easy. Okay. Do you thermal every time you feel a bump? Initially, when you're starting and you're trying to figure stuff out, yes. When you're a student, everyone else is staying up for half an hour and you're down in 12 minutes. That's because you flew through the valley of the sink. Okay, so you hit the sink all the way down. Okay. Eventually, you're gonna, you know what? Maybe if I turn it right, it wouldn't be. Oh, look at that! I'm going up. Or oh, I'm going up. So when you can start to recognize, oh, that's lift. Oh, that's lift. Maybe it's small and narrow. Maybe it's big and broad. Maybe you're just nicking the corner of it. So I've got some diagrams, but. The idea is to practice thermals in both directions. The Coriolis effect is not going to impact a thermal whether it's left or right. There's been all sorts of debates about this. Well, it works on a toilet drain, works on a tub drain, it does swirl one direction. Air or atmospherically, it doesn't make a huge difference. What you see the Coriolis effect in is that streak curving like that. It's not going to be this little thermal. You might have gusts that come up, corkscrew one way or the other way. It just is what it is.
The wind is always spiraling, moving in a strong thermal.
It's actually coming up like a cloud like this.
Right. So when it comes up like that, though, does it start having its natural, due to Coriolis? Maybe it does, but it probably doesn't affect.
Not enough for us. Yeah, it's too compact and it's going to dissipate. If the easiest way to imagine this is, you've all seen a pot of boiling water. You see the bubbles. It's not air. That's less dense water coming up, and it's not mixing with the other water until it cools and spills at the top, goes back down. So we're flying in a pot of boiling air. So we're looking for those bubbles coming up. Okay, this is a good segue for something else, but figuring out the day's thermal. So after release, try and figure it out. So what we do when we fly across country is right after release, that first thermal, we're mentally preparing, we're getting ready, things are on and checking everything's good. And we're also finding a thermal. And we're looking at that thermal. How strong is it? Earlier in the day, it's going to be weak and slow to get started. But at what altitude did it start to accelerate? And we look at that. That's really important for us. And so where was the center? Was it towards the, you have the cloud? Is it on the sunny side, the windward side? Is it on the back side? Where is that thermal forming in relation? Because you want to build a mental model of that cloud. It's not going to be true for the entire day. It'll be true for the next 2 hours. Okay, because things change over time. Look at the surrounding clouds and their cloud-based heights. Are you thermaling, and you look over there and those clouds are lower? But don't go over there. Keep going where the clouds are higher. Hopefully you picked a route or maybe you're saying, hey, I'm just going to fly where the clouds are higher today, and I'm going to come back. But don't go off down chasing lower clouds because you've just limited yourself by a few thousand feet. I did that a couple of years ago and got myself in a hole over by Vajero, so I had to dig out for 45 minutes to get back up. Hey, Lester. Once you leave that thermal and you go somewhere, you find another thermal. Compare that one to the first one. What's the speed? Where's the center? Where's the center in relation to the cloud, to the sun, to the wind? And look at what altitude did it start to speed up again? Because that speed up altitude is going to be the bottom of something very important that we call a working band. So when you're figuring out that these thermals, and it's got high cirrus, so obviously this stuff's going to blow over and kind of kill off lift as the day goes on. These guys are growing dissipated. This guy's cooking. This is going to develop into a mature cumulonimbus. Right now it's a really strong Q. I would put that at around 5,000 feet. If not a little bit more. Yeah.
Guys in the room, you understand it's sometimes hard figuring out one's rules. Clouds are not in the what's your name the rules, I'm going to change them. When you figure out the rules of that day, unless and until you change your masses, those are the rules that are going to apply. It's on the sunny side. It's on the upwind side. It's this height to this height. Those rules will serve you throughout the day. The hot bases will rise, the thermals will get stronger, but those rules should last you through unless and until you hit a different air mass. And when you get to flying cross country, you may fly through several air masses in the course of a day's flight. And now you gotta learn, all right, well, what are these rules?
Yeah. And that's why I said it's good for 1 to 2 hours, because if you're flying a good cross country, 1 to 2 hours, you're in different air. Or sometimes you get to the end of visible convection and there's a high pressure. And so you're flying through the pressure front and now it's blue and you're like, done it.
Or because of where we are, we've got water. If you go distant enough, airspace one way, and water, and water, and water. And if you're downwind of the water, the cool air from the water will come in. You get up near Hanover, and there are days we say, there are clouds, there's blue. Don't go there.
Yeah.
That's not just high pressure.
Yeah,
That's marine air.
Yeah, you'll get wiped out. So cycles. This is the fun one, because as the clouds develop, they'll eventually get to a convection layer. They will spread out if there's an inversion layer and block out the sun. And so there won't be any more heating because the sun's not reaching the ground. And now everything that was up will dissipate and drop. And so it'll cool quickly. You might find residual lift under these gray wispies. Take it. If you're doing your 5 hours, and this is really important for your 5 hours, all of you who need to do a 5 hour, yeah, sorry, or 4 hours and 56 minutes. Surviving the cycle is the most important thing. You might have 1 or 2 cycles on a 5 hour. On a cross country, hopefully you're flying between the cycles. You're either ahead of them or you're right behind them as they're redeveloping. But you will fly through a cycle or an area of overdevelopment. It takes about 20 minutes to a half hour for that reaction to get going again, for the sun to break through, for the ground to heat up, to start producing lift. It's not to say the ground went chilly and frozen. There's heat there, but not enough to start cooking again. And then you need the triggers and everything else. So you can either stay there, or you can look at the ground and say, hey, 5 kilometers over there, there's a sunny spot. Over you go, unless it's like Hanover and there's a lake right beside it. And, that's just lake effect, because there's no lift there, that's why it's blue. But if the sun's hitting the ground, try it. Like you're now in survival mode, right? If you're up high, great. But being up high, look at your sink rate. If your sink rate is 3/4 of a meter per second, you're losing about 45 meters every minute or 150 feet. So 20 minutes, you're going to lose 3,000 feet, and that's zero. Okay, that's not flying in sync. That's just zero, and you're flying at your minimum sync speed. You're just hanging on by your fingernails. If it's a half hour, you're going to lose 4,500 feet. So you want to make sure that this is survivable. Okay. Yes, take notes. Surviving the cycles is your key. Try and head upwind a little bit. Try and head, if you're down, try and head back towards the club, because obviously at some point you're going to run out of altitude. So you want to be back where it's survivable, safe, the airstrip and everything else. We're not flying for anything other than a pat on the back, and someone's going to forget about us next week. So this is what overdevelopment looks like. This is when Bill let me fly as a Mosquito. And so obviously over here, look at the ground and look at the sky. I mean, it's great. There's good lift underneath. But down here, all overdeveloped. And off in the distance, where you can't see the horizon, there's gray coming down. That's showers. Okay, so you don't want to be flying there. That's 100% saturated air coming down, guaranteed sink. That being said, sometimes on the backside of a shower, there's actually lift coming up. Okay, so in isolated showers, you may find amazing lift to help you sort of get your way home, but don't go run out looking for it. Obviously, I'm either going to push west here, or I'm going to break out into the sun and the obvious convection. I'm going to avoid this. Same things in the K-13, and we're surrounded by columns of rain down here by York. rain out here, we're flying in a hole, and it completely overdeveloped, but it's nice up here. And just so happened, the air was coming sort of northwest to southeast. So we got missed by all this. We got a little bit of rain, but not very much. Great day, great picture of what overdevelopment looks like. But if you're out on course, overdevelopment looks like that. Okay, that was in the provincials. I'll talk about this during the landout phase. But it just swept over. The entire contest landed. Most of them made it to, there's an airfield out by Ingersoll, and most of them landed there. Gosson and I landed here, but eventually you gotta eat dirt if you don't survive the cycle. So pick a good field.
What time of the year was that?
Autumn. They'd already turned it over and they'd already spread manure.
Did you walk?
Well, I took the grass. But Gosson wasn't so lucky. He took middle of the field. Even in that, the Jantar, the center of gravity is like right on the wheel. And so if you squeeze the brake too much, you'll tip over. When you land in dirt like this, loose soil, the wheel stops rotating and the glider rotates, but you have enough forward momentum. You now become a bulldozer. And I've got a NACA scoop underneath the nose of the plane, and so that filled up with dirt. So I'm out there poking away the dirt and prying it and everything else. Well, I've got two ducts that come from the NACA scoop up to clear out any condensation from the forward air screen. So my very next flight had a bump in the runway and I was IFR. All that dust came up and I can't see the tow plane. There's just dust floating. I'm like, okay, just here we go. And I'm like, okay, I can see a wing. I'm crabbing. Okay, I can see one of the wing of the tow plane. I'm good. But yeah, that was nasty. So watch your cycles, watch your overdevelopment. And instead of overdeveloping, thermals also dissipate. So they can okay, gone. Whatever the source was, it finished. Farmer took a tea break. Lazy bastards. So, oh, I'm sorry. Farmer. So sometimes things do kill the thermals, maybe drifted too far away from the source, and that was the end of it. But it's okay, fly on to the next one, fly on to the next one, fly to the next one. Law of averages says the farther downstream you go, the more chances you have of finding a thermal. So just because you feel unlucky here doesn't mean that in 5 kilometers you're not going to find lift. In fact, the farther you go, the chances actually increase of you finding a thermal, unless you're in a sink streak. If you're in prolonged sink for 30 seconds or more, turn 90 degrees. Just get out of there and change your course and maybe you'll hit something. Okay. Get in, get up, get out. That's your mantra. It used to be get high and stay high. Those days are gone. Okay. When we used to fly 126s, or everyone shares the pain. It's a great plane if you want to spend 4 hours going 100 kilometers an hour.
But that's a good strategy for the silver distance. You don't have to go anywhere.
No, you just let the
You
wind
just have
push
to
you.
not land.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So you guys, when you're starting, you're going to try and get as high as possible, and you're going to spend a lot of time milling around at the top. That's great if you want to practice thermaling. That's not really effective thermaling. You want to get in there and learn how to monitor your thermals, analyze your thermals. Get in, get up. Where did it start speeding up? Where did it start slowing down? Okay, go off to the next one. Did I share it with somebody? What's going on? So if all you're doing is milling around, hey, I was up for an hour. Great, you're out for an hour. Okay, here's your C badge. Did you learn anything? Yeah, I survived. Okay, if you go 2 thermals or 3 thermals or 4 thermals and you explore different sorts of lift, and you're looking at ground sources, you do this, you're doing this, you think about this, that's actively working, that's actively doing the things that you should be doing. All these little disciplines you're going to be developing. It's great. The more time you spend in the thermals, the less time going cross country. And I have a story for this, I'll get to it in a bit. But if you spend 45 minutes getting up in the thermal, and you've only got the glider for an hour, and you spend the next 15 minutes whirling around at the top, okay, all you did was catch a thermal. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm not going to judge you much, but that's not the judgment there. But what you really want to do is fly out, use that to go somewhere. So if you're at 4,000 feet, and you know it takes 2,000 feet to get back to the club circuit height, then go up, until you get to 2,000 feet upwind, and then come back. So you've got that tailwind advantage. Use that height to go somewhere and come back. How far do you get in 15 minutes? These are good little exercises. So make notes of your stuff. And at 500 feet below, that's knock it off height. How do you know what altitude the clouds are at? You might have to figure that out. I'm going to edit this out later. You might have to go cloud base and then come back on. So the other thing too is establish your working band and discipline yourself and fly between thermals. Don't circle in a weak thermal. Push on to the next strong one. You can slow down. So the more time you spend in sync, the more altitude you lose. The more time you spend in lift, the more altitude you gain. So speed up in sync, slow down in lift. So this is your magic diagram. This is the working band. Every disciplined cross-country glider pilot lives and dies by the working band. Okay, so it's not get high and stay high anymore. So your thermals are going to develop between 1,000 feet, 1,500 feet here. They're just going to start to develop. They're disorganized bubbles low down. So if you've tried to catch lift off here, unless it's super amazing low down, you're in the circuit and you're coming in. So thermals down below 1,500 feet above ground, they're good for surviving, and that's it. But you're not going to be getting away unless you've got patience of Job and you're going to cycle up through the other stuff. Between 1,500 to 3,000, this is on a really high cloud-based day because we have contests that launch once cloud base is 3,000 above ground. So we actually fly contests with it that low. Your working band is like 500 feet, 800 feet, that's it. Down here, I call that the saving area. So any thermal is a good one. When you're down below 3,000, pick any thermal, ride it up. Just give it time. It'll build momentum. And hopefully you look over and you see like 3 gliders climbing faster than you, which is a sure sign you're in the wrong thermal. Go join them. You've got a buffer. So this is when the thermal starts to accelerate. This is when you notice that the thermal is starting to get faster. You weren't like doing 3 turns to get 50 feet. You were getting 50 feet on a third of a turn. Okay? And it goes up faster than that. High pressure days on a really good thermal, you can max out the variable. It's really strong. So you take note of that altitude when it started to speed up. And when your altitude started to, you actually saw the altimeter hand moving. Okay, that's good lift. And so that's the bottom of your working band. And then 500 feet to cloud base. So on this day, I'm saying the cloud base is 8,000. So between 3,500 and 8,000, I've got 4,500 feet that I can play around with. That's my glide. So I'm going to get high in a 3-knot thermal, and then I'm going to leave. And when I hit the next thermal, it might not be that strong. I'm going to slow down in it, spend time and lift, and then I'm going to push and go. I'm going to slow down, push and go. And then here, maybe it's around 4,000 feet or something. Okay, I hit a good thermal, I'm low enough, I can afford the time to get back up and then get out. So it's hit and go, hit and go, hit and go. But again, once you get down to that buffer area, anything, doesn't matter if it's weak, whatever, you want to get back up into the working band where the lift is going faster, faster.
Yeah, there are 4 phases to the thermal. There's finding the thermal. And that's where you want to know the previous rules. It was on the opposite side, it was on the sun side, but finding it and learning to read the clouds. That will find the thermal. And you'll get really good thermals and really weak thermals. So you want to find a good thermal. Finding the thermal. Second phase is centering the thermal. And this is an art. There are instruments in more advanced planes that are going to assist you with a little thermal assistant and help you. There's a whole thing about centering the thermal. Third phase is the climb. And you see, woohoo, 5 knots, right? And when you look back at your flight computer, you found you got 2.8 knots. How can that be? It's because of the time you spent finding it, centering it, and then the last one is the lingering at the top, the milking. So, rules of thumb, don't, particularly down low, don't leave a thermal unless you're confident you're going to get a stronger thermal close by. Number two, when you are watching the instrument that shows you your average climb over the whole thermal, and another reading is your average climb over the last 20 seconds. When it gets to where you're up high and the average climb is dropped below your average over the whole thermal, now you're reducing your average over the whole thermal. So when you're doing your silver, you bounce the top because you don't have to go fast. When you want to go to gold, now you gotta go faster. And that means the best way to go faster is, as Mike said, you ain't moving when you're in a thermal. So spend less time in the thermal. That means climb faster. That means take a deeper climb. If it's a shallow climb, if you're down 500 feet and you bounce up, you're still paying that find the thermal, center the thermal. If it's one where you're going to make a 2,500 foot climb, you're going to amortize those low yield turns down low over the whole thermal, and your average for the whole thermal will be much closer to the strong part of the thermal. So that and then the McCready thing that I'm sure we'll get to at some point is the stronger your climbs, the faster you fly. So your speed is going to go up materially, and that's the big jump from silver to gold, is learning to fly fast.
Yeah. And being really disciplined. I started out, everyone here is going to do the same thing. You're going to be very conservative. You're going to milk it. That's the exact right turn. Like you're milking it at the top. Do I go? Do I not go? Do I go? Do I not go? And you're always looking over your shoulder at the club. Oh shit! No, the hanger paint job is nice. You know. And it's like there's this big magnet. The magnet's caused by you, right? So that's why I encourage you: fly a thermal away, come back. Fly another thermal away, come back. Right. So Charles says, like, get in, get up. Out. So 50K flight, yeah, you're not worried about speed. You're just trying to overcome a mental barrier. We're going to get to that when we get to cross country. But you're going to do whatever you can. So the odds are in your favor. So you're going to try and maintain that height all the way. If you've got a cloud street, like, that's money in the bank. You know, that's great if your cloud street's like Sosa's back, like, nailed, gone, 98 kilometers down. Hopefully that street's still there, but 98 kilometers back. We'll talk about the airspace later. But
I took 14 thermals flying from New York to Stratford. 14. Why did I take 14? Because there were only 14. I took everyone. I took the weak ones, I took the strong ones. How far did I take? Till I was 500 feet below cloud base.
yeah,
And what's the next one?
there was a writer for soaring for a gliding magazine called the Platypus, and so he tells the story about in one contest he placed 28th, but then the next contest he placed 14th, and so someone interviewed him and said, "Wow, such an amazing difference in your performance. What do you attribute that to? What did you do different?" He says, "Well, there was 28 competitors in the first one, only 14 in the second." Okay, so memorize the working band, and it really is, as Charles said, get in. Part of getting up is centering. That's why you want to fly precisely. So you're feeling what the thermal is doing, and you're trying to figure out, now that you're in it, that's not good enough. Where's the best lift? So we're going to talk about that in a sec.
And as Mike said, with the wings, the lift will shift around. You ever seen the trail for a rocket launch? It doesn't go like this. It goes, it's illustrating what's happening at different altitudes.
Yeah.
So you're all the time centering.
Yeah.
And Captain Azuno's rule is really simple: far away from the center.
Yeah. In hot air balloons, that's how they actually get around the course. They float to different altitudes because the wind at different altitudes. So does it veer or back as you increase or decrease in height? That's on the transport exam. So you can use that to your advantage in a hot air balloon. We're not hot air balloons. Okay. So I need to give you an illustration of a working band. So when you post your flight on the OLC, this is my 300 Diamond. So we talk about golds, diamonds, silvers, things like that. So a 300 is a gold. A 300 Diamond is you declared 3 turn points and you flew them in that order, very specifically. So it means you got to know what you're doing. And I'd been practicing. I actually flew it the year before, but I blew the start-finish gate. So I practiced nothing but starts and finishes for the next few flights. So you talk about what's a task that I can do as a post-solo pilot. Practice starts and finishes. Okay. So I went from Toronto Soaring up to Hanover, down to Mitchell, over to Alliston, and then back. So I put Toronto Soaring in the middle of one of the legs. So I have 3 turn points, and I'm right in the middle. Look at the working band. I get my nice high climb. I did the long straight glide almost to Hanover. So you see there's no little bumps there. Those bumps are actually spirals when you zoom in on them. There's no bump until I'm almost at Hanover. So from here to here is about a 40-kilometer straight glide downhill. Why couldn't I find lift? Because it was blue. The whole day I did my 300 was a blue day, except for one stretch. So now you can see where I'm like, oh, God help me. And then I found it in the weeds. There I was. I'd like to open a savings account. So yeah, 6-9er, you're good. So I found lift, and then I flew. I found better lift, and then I hit the turn point. So that line is the leg, and then you can see I'm pretty much in between. Hit another low point, stay in between. But most of that you can see that most of my flying is within an altitude band.
What is it? What is 17 to 2,500 meters?
Thereabouts, yeah. But the tops, I never got past the top of this, which was 2,500 meters. So it was a good day.
4,000 to 7,000.
Yeah. So, yeah, the problem with the day was when I had the wind behind me, especially on the leg from Hanover down to Mitchell, and the wind was a little bit out of the north, as soon as I exited the thermal, in sync, and it was massive sync, I lost 500 feet within seconds of leaving the thermal. So I'm at the top, and I milked it, but only to speed up. And so I'm diving down in lift, and then shoot out through it, hit the sink, I'm through the sink, and then I'm back on course. Average speed I was flying very conservatively was 68 kilometers an hour. But the OLC, when you scroll down, it'll give you data boxes. CU does the same thing, tells you what percentage time you were thermaling. We'll see one in there. What your average speed was per leg. If you look at CU, it can tell you how many lefts, how many rights you took. And it can dial it down. How many feet did you lose because you didn't optimize the lift as well as you should have? Okay. It's really interesting stats when you start to play them out and analyze it. The other thing that you see here is the airspaces. So this is Pearson with the notch for Brampton, with the notch for Guelph Air Park. There's Kitchener-Waterloo, and London is down here. This area here is called the slot. There's Sosa. So when the guys from Sosa come up, they either come up this way on the west side of Waterloo, or they come up through the slot, and they have to stay down below 5,500 feet till they get north of Guelph, and then they can rise up and go.
And it's even worse for us guys up here, because you go down there to get the convergence.
Yeah.
The steam breeze that's coming in from Lake Erie versus the northern Brigham. And at the end of the day, when you've gone to St. Thomas and come back, at the end of the day, there you are downwind. You gotta go through this narrow little slot.
Yeah.
And dying thermals for the headwind.
And
you got to stay below 5,500.
yeah, until you're north of Guelph. And what are you crossing? The Niagara Escarpment. What happens at the escarpment? There's a shelf. And so sometimes the air just sits in there like a dead pocket. And so you really have to figure out that weather and be familiar with the routes so that you get through it. At Colgan, you guys are under the zone, and so you have to go over to Loretto to do your climb to get outside of the zone. Otherwise, you're locked at, I think it's 3,500 feet. Yeah. So this is what a blue day looks like. And so this is in the junior. And in the autumn, you'll always have inversions. The inversion is easy to see because it's that smudge line. So everything below the inversion, it'd be nice and clear. All of a sudden you get up to it, which means you're in it. That's why you're seeing it. So that's the dust, the condensation, everything else. The easiest way to see if there's an inversion is if there's a chimney or a farmer is burning something, the smoke comes up, goes dead flat. It doesn't break through. If you're lucky, you get a thermal that actually pokes through the inversion. And it's wicked when you get that because now you're king of the world. But eventually, you got to come back down through the smudge. But inversions, they do cap off the lift, and so that is the end of your working band, no matter what. Thermals will hit it and go sideways and then come down. Hit it, go sideways, come down. It's easy to fly through the core of a thermal at the top of a thermal on a blue day because there's no cumulus there to show you that you're now at cloud base. And so more often than not, I've been flying around, it's been great lift, and all of a sudden I fly through and the tail comes up. You're like, what the, oh yeah. And you just flew through the core and it lifted you, and now you're out and you're hitting sink because you're spilling over. So the thermals spill over, and so you sort of hit the edge of it. So you can circle back in really.
You got two ways that you want to use that are unlike Toronto.
Yeah.
One is you want to use your trim so that you have a light touch on the stick, because the plane will talk to you. You'll feel it. And the other is the seat of your pants. When you fly through the thermal, you'll feel the bump. And those that are subject to motion sickness actually have an advantage. They're more attuned to, it's a real benefit. You'll learn to figure it. And so you're flying along, you're going along in thermal speed, 80 knots, and you hit the bump, and you pull up. You will learn to feel where it is. Make a full circle. Figure out which side of the circle was the good lift and which side was the sink, and fly away from the sink. Stop and learn, oh hey, yeah, it is a good thermal, or I can't find it. At some point, stop wasting time, maybe it was just a bulb going past.
That's it. And we actually have used AutoCAD to benefit here. It does have gliding purposes. So high pressure days, thermals are narrow but strong at the core. They're difficult to see, so you're going to look for the haze domes at the very top if they're present. So when the thermal's just starting, you'll see wisps of white, and then it dissipates and it goes away.
Polarized glasses, head towards the top of your head towards the sun,
Yeah.
and you'll see it. Screws up reading instruments sometimes, but
Yeah.
you'll see the haze domes.
Yeah, Serengetis do it too, and so do brown. That's why I fly with brown or amber shades, because it's better for cloud definition, and you can pick up these things. Gray or neutral gray is what most power pilots fly with, so you don't get the reflection off the prop.
With polarized or not?
I'm not polarized, because if I tilt my head, I can blank out instruments. Or if you can go black, because maybe the canopy has a polarized tint to it, so when you turn your head, the world goes dark. So it's a coin toss. If you're lucky enough to not need prescription glasses, then go to Shoppers and pick out a pair of cheap and dirty and try fly with them whenever it feels better. If it's prescription, hopefully you can figure it out. So,
And when you're using prescription, are you increasing because of, sorry, maybe it's different?
no, it's the same prescription. They're high index lenses. These ones are Ray-Bans, but they're actually thicker than my previous, which are Seiko. Traffic's harder to see once the inversion layer starts to descend. So I talked last week at the AGM how I was part of a near-miss incident because I was on somebody's horizon line. So aircraft that are just below the horizon are invisible. And so when they're flying around at the inversion level, you won't be able to see them. So you really got to be prudent with your lookouts. The nice part is that there's fewer distractions. And I'm going to go back to my 300 because I had a distraction. Look how straight the course line is out in the blue. Pretty dead straight. Pretty dead straight coming here. I went over to Stratford, went all the way over here. Why did I divert off the course line? What was there that made me divert? Cloud Street. Okay, that was guaranteed lift. I didn't have to work so hard. And I was able to breathe easy. I still had the thermal, but I could breathe easy. But that was for me, that was worth the 20-kilometer hike out to get over there. And once I got to Airport Road again, by Primrose, just east of Primrose, it was blue. All the way to Alliston and then all the way back. So you just get used to flying in the blue. My first flight in blue was 200 kilometers and was also a perfect triangle. Like you could have put a straight edge on it. So there's way fewer distractions on blue days. But the stress is high as you get lower. My butt was eating the seat cushion a few times. So it happens. You know.
Mike mentioned Alliston and learning from the mistakes of others. I'm a really long-time pilot trying early cross country, and I put in Alliston as a the turn point. If there's a north to the prevailing wind, the cold marine air will come off Georgian Bay, down that valley towards Alliston. And you got, if it's a northwest wind, going back, you have to climb up to get up to the higher elevation of the Dundalk Plateau, and you got a reduced lift.
There's a couple things that we I could mention.
Yeah.
So because you know the clouds as your markers, typically on a blue day, your eyes don't go from the sky, you go to the ground and see what you generate thermals. So I'm looking at gravel pits or tops of factories or something that I think is going to heat up in the sunshine. So that's, your eyes go from the clouds to the ground on blue days. And the other thing is if you're flying with somebody, it's also nice to fly if you're sort of abreast each other, and then if someone hits some lift. So I happened to Carrie and I one time, we were both coming back from Creamer, blue day, you know, we're not flying like this, we're sort of abreast, and then, oh, got one over here, so it really helps to work as a team, as a pair.
Yeah.
Basically, what about the brown wind, brown?
Yeah, plow field, absolutely. Anything that you think is going to absorb that sun and
Maybe what is darker during the day, and maybe
yeah.
So we'll talk very quickly about what to avoid, because Jim's 100% right. I'm not looking up, I'm looking down, and I'm feeling as I'm going. The first thing I'm looking for is a farmer tilling a field, especially in the autumn, because they're kicking off heat. That's a, like landing the jackpot. Things I'm avoiding is marshes and lakes, downwind or over top. Sometimes the thermals tilt over a lake. I picked up a beautiful thermal over Guelph Lake years ago, and it smelled like manure. Well, it happened to be tilted, and there's the farmer spreading manure on the ground. So, okay, if you smell it, you're in it. And we nicknamed those brown thermals. Why, Mike? Anyway, but yeah, you're looking at the ground, and it could be a parking lot. It could be there's a slope and the sun's just hitting it. There's a ridge just north of the Great Lakes, and the sun can bounce off of that. And so it's just like half a field to the north, and there's a little bit of a ridge you can explore, but it's just sun hitting it at an angle, because then the sun's hitting it more or less perpendicular, not at the angle where the sun would normally be hitting it, but now it's like this. So it's like a solar collector, and it's shutting heat off. Yeah.
So I guess the exception to the rule of working on the ground on blue days, if I see a circling bird, and that saved me more than once, I go towards, and then all of a sudden you see there's 2 or 3 more, and then you're in a thermal's like, thank you very much. So birds are your friends.
We had a flight last year, and it was blue, and we're looking for the birds, and we found the birds, and then the birds found us. And all we are is a big seagull, and everything was great until the hawk came in, and the birds didn't. It was mostly gulls, and the hawk was behaving. The seagulls didn't like tuck a wing and go, because that's what seagulls do. And then once we left, we're like, good luck. But yeah, you're looking for other birds. Birds are great. Turkey vultures, seagulls, down low, they lie. They're bastards.
By the way, you're passing a bird. Going under a bird is dangerous. Birds, when they're in danger, they dive.
Yeah. Carrie's got one last quick story. He was catching up to a juvenile hawk, and juvenile hawks are curious, but birds of prey, they're really cocky. They don't get out of the way for anybody. And so he's able to catch up to it. And now it's right at his wing root, and he's like, well, okay, what? And now he's sort of painted himself into a corner. And the hawk just looked at him. It lifted its butt over the wing, and that was the end of it. Another time he's flying along, and he's like, oh, cool, bird of prey. So he starts to chase it. So it does this, he does this. It does this, he does this. And then it dives down, the wings go back a little bit, he's speeding up, Carrie speeds up. It does an immelman and dives. He said, yeah, okay, he wins. So, as Charles pointed out, earlier in the day, the thermals are going to change. The basic model won't, but they're going to be, earlier in the day, they're going to be weak and the ceiling's lower. The ceiling expands as the heating goes on. The thermals are stronger, the ceiling's lifted substantially. It might go up 2,000 to 3,000 feet. I'm going to make a PDF of this if you want, so I'll just send it out. Between 2 to 4, I would even go earlier than that, between 2 to 4 really is peak heating time. So that ground's being cooking all morning and it's throwing off heat. That's 2 great hours that if you're behind, you can catch up and you take advantage of. Or if you're doing your 50K and someone else volunteered to fly it out and they landed out at X, but you can get an arrow tow, like I traded off with my brother. I flew down to Sosa, he tried to fly back. I lollygagged and landed, and then they bureaucrated red taped him to launch back. He landed out just north of Guelph. So he missed that peak window time. The wind direction may change depending on your location and what the air mass is doing. The wind can swing. We've had to change runways here. Not that the lift died, but as the center of the pressure of the air mass moved, the wind changed direction across the day. So it can happen. The sun's location is going to change as the day progresses. And so now will your mental model of where's the lift coming from under the cloud, because the sun changed somewhere. Instead of being over here in the morning, it's now over here. It can be disorienting. There's something else that's going to get you too. But during the early evening hours, this is when the forests and the marshes actually save your butt, because all that heat has been just sitting in the canopy of the trees. Eventually, the air surrounding it cools down and becomes denser. This is trapped, lighter, less dense air, and it releases. It's not enough to thermal in usually, but it's broad across the whole region. So you have reduced sink, if not lift, flying over a gigantic forest or across a gigantic marsh. Okay.
By the way, on marshes, where it's shallow water, the sun and the infrared will go through that water, hit the dirt, rotted leaves and whatnot, and heat up that water. And if you've ever noticed when you get out of the shower, the fog is aligned, it's clear below and foggy above. Wet air, damp air is lighter than dry air. And gas bladder glove especially, where you think, oh God, it's wet, it won't be thermal. There's a thermal here, right? And it's very shallow water. You can real good sort of thermals.
And the shallow water is an amazing thermal battery. So during the day, the sun heats up the water. Now during the early part of the day, the ground gets heated up faster than the water, and so you have thermals right at the shoreline. Now, if there's a perpendicular breeze coming across or mantle coming across, that air will go up and over, and that's how you get shoreline convergence that Charles mentioned earlier. And I've used it to advantage a few times. So when you're at the beach, there's the heat or the breeze is blowing from behind you out towards the water. So it's always nice at the beach, but it's a little bit cool because that air is coming in to feed that thermal. So it's a little bit of cool air right at the water, about maybe a half a kilometer in. It's nice and hot. You get closer to the shore, it's a bit of a temperature drop. But at night, the flow reverses because now the land's cooled down, but all that heat that was stored in the water is now creating thermals, and it's going up. And it draws the hot air from the city or from the land over. And so that's why it's warmer at the beach at night. Also, if you have good company and a couple of shots of tequila. But the other one is over marshes, it's shallow water. And so it will start to generate lift during the day. But getting home towards the evening, for sure. So you actually want to change your methodology to save and get home and look for lift over forests and shallow marshes. Look for lift over gravel pits, parking lots, farm field where the tractor is disturbing the windward side of a forest or hill, because the wind's going to go up and over the trees. And so we feel that here in the fall, especially if we're taking off on 3.3 or 3.6, there's the trees and you feel that turbulence, but it actually generates thermals higher up or it'll trigger. Radio towers and wind turbines are great on the downwind side because they disrupt the airflow. And so that disruption kicks off the thermals that were stagnant on the ground. So look for lift on the downwind side of a radio tower or any of the turbines that we've got. Charles mentioned that wet areas directly downwind don't produce lift. York has been socked in because of the lake effect off Lake Luther, and it's enough to come down about 5 miles and kill lift. But if you go to the southeast or southwest corner, there's great lift. Just don't go over York, because for sure you're going to visit them and have to pay for an arrow tow, which I've done because I got sucked in. I saw 233 circling, and this is great. No, he's going down. Clouds that are bright and white and starting to develop, those are great. Those are living clouds. Clouds that are gray and wispy and thready, those are dissipating, dying clouds. Tomorrow's another day. Be ready to call bingo and get back home, be safe. Or if you're far away, change from cross country and task completion to I'm going to have a good land out. Both of those are bingo terms, okay? So the thermal star is connected, disconnect, bubbles low down. Feel for the upward surge when it's constant for 3 seconds. So you're flying along, and this, okay, so here we're going to find them. You fly along, all of a sudden you hit lift. 1, 2, 3, turn. Give yourself 2 to 3 seconds. If it's just 1 and dead, it's just a tiny mouse fart. If it's good sustained lift for 2 or 3 seconds, it's worth the turn. And explore it. Left, right, whatever wing went up, that's the one you curl into. Work your average trend. Don't micromanage the bubbles. Like, I'm up and down, I'm up, no, it's, okay. As you're starting out, just use that to try and build a mental picture for a second. Obviously, if it's 4 meters sink and 2 meters lift, you haven't centered it. That's something to worry about. But initially, when you guys are going out to find thermals, don't micromanage bubbles. You want to fly the trend of the rising air. So think a little bit bigger.
I just like to underline Mike's thing about forming a mental picture. That's really key all the time. Trying to be figuring out in your mind where is it?
Yeah. What can you do in an hour and a half with a couple of thermals? And this is in the pooch, the best LD of 30 to 1 at 85 kilometers an hour. So one thing that getting up and staying up does, I took Toya, and she'd never flown cross country, so at the end of the day, I was duty instructor, pooch is sitting there, anyone else want it? No, took it up, and threw it in the back seat, and let's go cross country. So I knocked out 98 kilometers in the pooch, which was a really fun flight, but it wasn't a lot of work. Here's a thermal. There's the continuation of the thermal. So there's the thermal, there's the continuation, and I'm flying down, went back, found some more lift, it flew right over Bellwood. I'm at 8,500 feet over Bellwood. Like, I'm not worried about landing out at this point. Topped up a little bit, went down to Air Sailing Club, and then Bellwood Lake is right here. So that's why I learned how to fly as air sailing. It's not there anymore. Arthur is York. I flew all the way back, all that height, almost 9,000 feet. A little bit of a top up here. Met up with Jim Freyett over Mount Forest. Hey Jim, how you doing? Not too bad. Where are you going home? No, I'm going home now. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna go home too. And then this is like wingovers and fun. But how many thermals did I take? I took 2 on leg 1, none on the second leg, 2, 1, none for the rest of it. How far did I go? 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers, 23 kilometers. What was my average glide ratio for a 30 to 1 glider at 85 kilometers an hour? Minus 67. That means I'm climbing the whole time. That's a cloud streak. You get a negative value for your glide ratio. Then I was 58 to 1, 46 to 1, 49 to 1, 35 to 1, and then screw it, let's have some aerobatics and have some fun. So that was 5 to 1. What was my average speed? So that's thermaling and cruising. So I had 2 thermals. I didn't have great forward speed. I went 10 kilometers and I did it 36 kilometers an hour, then 77, 72, 91. I flew 23 kilometers at 111 kilometers an hour at a glide ratio of 35 to 1. So I'm using all that height for advantage, and I'm being really smart about where I'm going. I mean, you could shoot, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. But that was an amazing day. I was taking advantage of street flying all the way there and all the way back. But that's the sort of stuff that you can do on a 1-hour flight. Getting down, this was a gimme. But you could go down to York and come back in an hour. It's 44 kilometers. The 44 kilometer average speed is pretty good for someone starting out.
I would like to encourage you all, register for the online contest this week.
Yeah.
And we're to make the IGC file, is the .igc is the file that is produced by any one of the flight recorders. Farm produces one. You can download that from your farm by sticking a thumb drive into the farm and download all of them by gates, and you know which is yours. Or you may have another instrument that does it. The
DLX could do it, the Woody can do it. Yeah.
and even some of the Freebird thing, what do they call them? Free flight computers.
So the Steve Flex?
XC Soar.
Oh, XC Soar, yeah. And even if your PDA or your phone, because you can get CU Mobile on your phone as an app, or XC Soar if you've got a little PDA.
Yeah, CU Mobile is called something else. The one on the phone now, I forgot what it's called, but
Yeah.
and so make the files, and you can post the files, and I will also send, or I don't know how to circulate it, but there's a paper I've got on flight analysis using CU. CU is a wonderful comprehensive thing. It's got the visual like that, it's got the barograph trace, it's got pages of statistics, and you can sit down with one of the pundits at the club and go through your flight with you and talk about it. And there are metrics that you'll be able to see comparing your flight to the others. You look at, for instance, percentage of time thermally. It's a big one. And as you get better, you will lower that. And it's not a good flight for me. It's not under 30% on average thermal day. You start off, you find kind of after time thermal. But there's a lot of metrics to help you. You can replay the flight in 3D, and you can look at how round were your thermals within the limits of, you've taken straight because it's fixed every so many seconds, a variable you can set. But learn to make your IGC, use the IGC, and it will serve you well when you want to do a task, because there's somebody in the room that talked to us about what it's like when you fly a flight, but you screw the recording.
Yep. The other thing with the trace is you can see how strong was the wind. So when Carrie and I did our 2 downwind dashes, we flew from Great Lakes, skirted the Oshawa Zone down to the shore of Lake Ontario. We used convergence all the way to the end of Lake Ontario to Kingston, Gananoque, then flew down to St. Lawrence. We made it to Brockville the first time, then I made it to Cardinal the second time. It was like 360 kilometers first time, 384 the second time. But we had a strong quarter and tailwind that was creating the convergence. So when we thermaled, you could see the trace, and my thermal spread over a 10-kilometer distance. So the slope of the thermal was like this. But you could see increasing in height, increasing in height, increasing in height. If we tried to do that course in the reverse direction, there's no way it would have happened. It just happened to be, and we knew we were taking advantage of. When we hit the convergence, we're surfing along the edge of it. At one point, Carrie's in a K6 on the jet car. His glide ratio is normally 34-1. He was 200-1 as a glide ratio. Remember the thermals, so just to wrap up a bit, the thermal's not a means to, or it's a means to an end. It's not the event in and of itself. It's a tool that you're going to perfect and hone. Speed control, thermal centering, we're going to talk about centering in a minute. Okay, and the more time spent, the less you do. So where do you find it? Where you're going to predict the sink. You're going to remember if it's a high pressure, low pressure, where's the wind coming from. You're going to use coordinated medium bank turns, fly around your best LD so you're not losing much height. Fly at 45-degree bank angle so your G load's not coming up, and so that your sink rate isn't stronger than the left rate. You always want to have net positive. If you fly slower, then you're at minimum sink. Any slower, and you're creating drag, and you have a loss of control, and stall spin now becomes easier.
If you're in a thermal, or a gust in a thermal, if you're close to stall speed, and all of a sudden there's a gust, that inner wing is going to go up above the critical angle of attack where the stall happens.
Yeah. So, yeah, as soon as you hit angle of attack, that's it. And so you have to recover.
In second spin.
Yeah. Joining other gliders. So you always have to assume when you're thermaling that you're a fiberglass magnet. Other people are going to join you. So don't change directions. Once you've established a direction, don't change it. I've seen a lot of guys reverse it. I downloaded some of the IGC files on the Pooch because I was updating the firmware and I was looking at them. And I'm like, what the hell? You see it go this way and then it goes this way. Like, why would you change direction? You're inviting a mid-air collision. Don't do it. Adjust the center. So we'll teach you how to adjust the center in a minute. You're going to split up the thermal. It takes about 30 seconds to complete a circle. So I've done this with a few of you, and I count out loud. Heads up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Look down. 8, 9, 10. Look up. 1, 2, 3. And you have to be disciplined like that. 7 seconds. Keep your head up. 3 seconds down, and you're only looking at a couple of things. Vario, airspeed, altimeter to make sure the hand's sweeping. That's maybe, have a look at the floor, but don't fixate on stuff. Look down, scan, look up, and keep scanning. Look at the horizons, keep scanning. Don't just look here, look over here. Who's joining you on the blind side? Okay. The most dangerous glider is one a little bit below your altitude, as they will encounter lift and come up into you. So this happened to me, keep it quick, in the provincials at Hawkesbury years ago. There was a bunch of us flying in a thermal. There was another guy flying right beside us. There's 4 of us in one thermal. We're flying this way, and he's flying the same way. Look what happens as you're flying the same way. So we're yelling at him, either join us or leave. So he eventually joined us. So now we're coming. Someone else came. I'm coming here. So as you're flying away, you're blind to them. As soon as I came in, here they come at just below my altitude. And so I've got about 10 seconds, not even, where you can foresee where the flight path is going to go. And I know they're going to hit lift and be at my altitude. I couldn't drop down because there was someone like right over there. I couldn't go up because I wasn't sure how much speed they were carrying and if they were going to do a bit of a zoom climb in. So the only thing I could do is pull out spoilers, skid, get in behind them, and then try and stay in. And they came in, and so I'm sitting in the cockpit of Hotel Tango, and their tail is where Steve? Yes. Steve is. We're that close. And I hauled on the brakes a little bit more to stretch back out, and he spaces himself around.
I'm guessing you had some advice for him?
No, someone else up did, and they said, one mic, you just cut off Hotel Tango, and you see the shoulders come up, and you see the head turn around, and you see this. And when we landed, he was the first at my glider, apologizing profusely. Colonel Robin Knowles says, you don't worry about the missile that flew past your canopy. And so, I'm not going to rage about it. Like, he's safe, I'm safe, no blood. All the fiberglass and paint is good. We're still flying. Let's get up and get home. We all landed out. But half an hour later, 4 of us in one field and 2 in another.
But understand, a big cloud can have multiple cores under it. And that's where you get a couple of gliders under this one, a couple of gliders under this one. It's a chance to see which core is better, and the guys in the weaker core should move to the stronger core.
And I'm going to get to that one because I got a picture. It's great.
I know you mentioned you're not supposed to change directions. I've often wondered, okay, you go to a new cloud, are you supposed to just keep on going the same direction?
No.
Okay.
No, whatever wing went up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I just...
If you fly into a thermal and you don't know, you didn't feel the wing go up, so you turn right and it's synced, then you do 270 degrees.
You're one slide ahead. You're one slide ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. We're 2 slides ahead. But it's exactly right. There's a centering technique invented by Richard Johnson. It's brilliant, the 270 turn. So when you're joining other gliders, we had the question last year, Aiden asked it, how do you join another glider in a thermal? Aim for their butt, because you'll never risk cutting them off. So if you aim for the backside or aim for the opposite side of the thermal, you never risk cutting them off. And so you're going to fly a degrading spiral to position yourself. So you might end up starting at the outside of them. As they come around, count, give them a little bit of space to get ahead of you, and then insert yourself into the thermal, preferably 180 degrees apart. But when you first join, it might be this. And then hopefully they see that you've joined, and maybe they'll tighten up a little bit. Or you're gonna see that they pop up, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna pop up there too. Maybe they realize, okay, they popped up, and now they're gonna center that, and now you're gonna center that too. Or maybe they drop down and they see you climbing, they're gonna adjust the circle. When you're in a shared thermal, you don't need the vario. You have the other glider. They're the vario, and you are their vario. You can see which one's going up higher, and so you both adjust until you both sort of zip up. And you can see where the sinky part is, you can see where the lifty part is, and you try and center that together. You don't even have to talk to each other. You just learn to do it. There's some that aren't quite at that level yet, and it's impossible to not road rage or scream at them through the, come on, you know, and, or, you know, hopefully they take a long stretch out and you can turn tight inside and go. Sometimes you do have to pass people in a thermal. So you try and do it on the outside. Try not to cut in front of them or inside of them. Very aggressive people do that. It's not polite. So try and do it outside if you're coming around. Communicate with them if you're going to pass. If you can see their tail number, then call them out. Say, hey, I'm going to pass, or can you tighten a little bit, or whatever. And communicate. You both have radios. When you're opposite each other, should look like me in the K-13 and Dave Gosson in his 20. That's Dave Gosson. So, and he cranks tight. He's got flaps. He can thermal slower because he puts it into a positive flap setting, which reduces his stall speed. It increases drag, but it allows him to fly slower, maintain lift at a higher bank angle, closer to the center of lift. The K-13 is great for going tight in thermals. So that's why we were able to climb up together really nicely. Don't circle directly above or below another glider. Okay, maintain 500 feet. Why? Because that's how much height you're going to lose if you go incipient. You need to recover before you smack them. Make sure they can see you. The easiest way to do it, wave. If they wave back, great. If they don't, it means they're from York. So, sorry, honey. No, keep it in. It's my favorite. Don't speed up. Don't crowd other gliders. Don't join directly beside. And as Charles said, you might have multiple cores. There are sometimes 3 cores under a thermal, and it's hard to know which one. Now, in fairness to the York, it was usually the 233 guys or the early 134 guys that were flying long like blinders. The Blaniks were pretty good. We'd dogfight with them a little bit. But sometimes you get 2 guys going in one direction one way and one direction going the other way, and they're going like this in the same thermal. You're like, avoid.
Or if one of them's Carl Spring, I've been in a thermal at 13. 13 of us go clockwise and Carl go counterclockwise.
Because he knows better.
Yeah.
And I'm Carl Street.
Because he's an asshole.
Well, yeah. I thought you were going to say pardon the French, but it sounds the same in English.
Racist and Nazi.
Well, that too. So, not in my photograph, a mega gaggle from Stefan Longer. Love Stefan. He's got a great YouTube channel. But this is what a racing gaggle looks like. And this is one of the lighter ones. When you get to the Worlds, they stack horizontally and vertically, and you might have 100 gliders in a gaggle, and everyone is playing nice in the sandbox. You might have 3 gliders beside each other going around, and right in front of them is another row of 3, and they're all waiting for the start gate to open. If you talk to Luke from Sapaniak, from Sosa, he'll tell you, because he's been in that gaggle. Yeah. In the provincials, you'd be in a gaggle of maybe 30, all waiting for the start gate. Or maybe they were nice and split up into 2 gaggles.
Feels like a carousel.
That's it. You don't want the unicorn that's doing this. Yeah. Here we go. So, you found the thermal, and you flew right into sync. Because, I'm sure it's a right-hand thermal. Sync. So what do? Don't reverse it. Keep going around. Commit. Own the mistake. And when you get to about here to when you first imagined when you hit the lift, and it's 270 degrees, and hopefully by this point you know what 270 feels like. Straighten out. 1, 2, 3, circle in. And now you're in a better chance of hitting the lift. So the core is here, the perimeter's here. You'll hit the weaker lift, and then strong, 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 weaker. Okay, turn. As soon as that lift starts dying down a little bit, honk it in. Your vario is a history device because it records or it shows you what happened 1 to 2 seconds ago. You're going to feel it here before it shows up on the needle. Okay, so when you feel it surge, all of a sudden you come from the sink into the surge, that's when you start counting 1, 2, 3. Don't look at the needle. 1, 2, 3. The needle will confirm what you felt, and then you establish your turn. So that's the magic 270-degree turn.
And you know what works for me? It's not in any of the books, but you know those ribbons we all wear for whatever the cause, breast cancer, bring back our warriors, that are like that? I often find not quite a full 270 works really well. So I'll do that and then turn. And the other thing is, separate your slow up to thermal speed from your rolling into the bank. If you do them together, you're going out there. The lift was here and you're going out there. Slow it up, then bank.
Yeah.
2 separate moves.
Yeah. Eventually, so there was something that used to teach, and we had to unlearn every student, speed up before every turn. Well, if you're cruising at 80 and you hit lift, you're not going to speed up. What you want to do is haul it back. And eventually you're going to get to the point where you can predict the lift. So this is why we tell you to analyze the first thermal, the second thermal, the third thermal, the fourth thermal. Start to build that picture because you're going to start flying thermal to thermal. And so now you're cooking along, cruising at 75, maybe to 80 if it's a really strong day or faster. Now you have to get back to, what's my favorite thermaling speed? 52. So I've got to slow down to that. So I slow down and then I roll. How many of you have done lazy eights with me? Okay, so I'm cooking along at 75, I pull up, and then I turn, and right at the very top of the lazy eight, I'll let it drop. But when I'm doing a chandelle entry into a thermal, I'm pulling up, slowing, and I'm already trying to guess, and I've got a pretty good idea of where that thermal core is. So I'm already hitting the thermal when I'm 55, and I stabilize my airspeed as I come around. Okay, so that's a chandelle entry into a thermal, and it takes a while to practice that. It also takes a lot of mental discipline to say, or daily analysis to say, I know where the thermal center is. But for sure, as you're getting close to a cloud, unless you're downwind of it, slow down so that you're at maneuvering speed and then roll in. That's a really good point. Thanks, Charles. So here's where AutoCAD comes to play. Thermal centering, easy peasy. Imagine your cylinder with +8 in the middle, and +4, +2, 0, and then you've got your sink out here. So the wind is coming here, thermal's going up, it's spilling over and down here. So you're approaching from the upwind side, you hit a little bit of lift, you count 1, 2, 3, and then you turn. Maybe you left your turn a little bit too long, or you're watching the vario. So you turn here, now it's only +2. So you come back around, you establish your lazy circle. As you're circling, you can tighten up to try and get the core jink, your bank angle a little bit more to make adjustments to get to the core. Keep it nice and tight. And you want the 4, you don't want the 2, you don't want the 0. You want the 4. If the core is really strong and broad, it won't be a high pressure day, it'll be a low pressure day, it'll be broad, then yeah, you can hang out in and around the core. But mostly you want to be in this region somewhere, and that's sort of the magic circle.
Would you go to 45 immediately on thermal entry, or would you want to stay a little bit shallower first while you're filling up the thermal? Or does it depend on the type of day?
So explore the 0. If you don't really know what the thermal's doing, explore the 0, because you're not sinking. And when I say explore the 0, it means you've got a compensated vario. If you guys were around with chat last week, there's raw varios that just tell you going up and down. Most of what we fly are compensated total energy, so it's telling you what the plane and the thermal are doing together. So if you've got 0, it means your sink rate at 0.75 down is matching the 0.75 coming up. So your net is 0. So you can explore the 0 and come, go a little bit left. Maybe it's getting a little bit stronger. Okay, well, it's really strong over here. Okay, this is where it is. Now I'm going to dial it in. So, try a nice sweeping turn in 0 at 30 and then start to try and visualize where the core is. So that's the early steps of trying to locate where's that center of the thermal and work your way to where the lift starts to get stronger.
One of the favorite techniques involves when you feel the surge, roll down to maybe 30 degrees from 45.
Yeah.
And then bank up to 45. And when you feel, when the lift diminishes, tighten it up.
Yeah.
So as you get into where it's the core, right, you fly further into the core and then bank.
Yeah.
But it's a good idea to have a round circle. Then you know this side is the weakest, this side is the strongest. So when you come around the second circle, that's where you'll drop down to 30 degrees flat. You displace the circle.
Yeah.
But
Shift the center of it.
But going back to an earlier thing, if you are not maintaining a constant speed and a constant angle of bank, you're not flying a circle. So you will want to hold that so that you can fly a circle and find out which side your circle is of the circle you should be in,
Yeah.
and displace it.
Yeah. I've flown as shallow as a 10-degree bank just to try and feel where it is and demonstrate, okay, this is 0. Let's tighten up a little bit. So I tighten the turn a little bit, hold it, 2, 3. Okay, and then I keep that, 20, 30 degree bank. Okay, let's make another adjustment to get in. So a little bit tighter. And now, 10 to 20 degrees, you're flying out here. You make a tighter adjustment to come in, then you flatten it a little bit, make a tighter adjustment, and then tighten it and fly there. So you want to explore, really explore what's happening here, what's happening. That's why that first climb is so important, because that's what you're doing on the first climb of the day, or the second climb of the day, is you're trying to analyze the thermals and trying to get a good mental picture of what it's doing. It's hard to do until you start experiencing it more and more and more. And after 30 years, I still learn, 34 years, I still learn something new every flight about how I didn't realize that. And even the things that Charles is talking about, you think that this is stuff that I would remember like this. And some of it, yes, and so like, yeah, that's important too. Or Jim says, you look at, yes, that's exactly right.
I flew once in Australia with a very famous fighter pilot, Ingo Renner, and it was a blue day. So there were no cloud markers. And it was an inversion day, and it was windy, and it was after a cold front. And nonetheless, we flew at 300K. But I'd be flying along, and Ingo would say, okay, Charles, pull up, we're going to come into a thermal. So I pull up. Well, Ingo, how did you know that? Well, I don't know, I just knew. And I kept asking, come on, this is supposed to be a master class, tell me. Well, I don't know, feel for the, there's a sort of turbulence where the upgoing mixes with the sink. Ingo, you told me to slow down before there was any turbulence. He says, I don't know, I just know. It's like when you drive I'm in Florida, the life cycles there are longer. I have a sports car. I know when I can put the clutch down and put it into first. Because I know. You will get to where on the day you've got some idea of when the next one should come, and you're more vigilant for it. It's nothing but hours.
Anyone who's flown with me will know the frustration that they have, because they'll be flying along, I can't find any lift, and I'll tell them, turn right, 90 degrees, fly 15 seconds. How did you know it was there? Because I know. Right? Like, eventually...
It's not happy.
I know your confidence is going down. I know that too.
It's full of clouds and I'm coming down in 12 minutes. I'm doing something wrong.
That's the dreaded valley of sync.
Okay.
When you fly and you go through, 0, 2, 4, 8, like wham, you get lifted up. As soon as you feel it diminish, crank hard. You just flew through the core. You want to keep that turn as tight as possible. So when you fly, the cores are invisible. You can't see this stuff. You can kind of guess from the shape of the cloud and the wind. But as you're going, you're going to hit that cloud right in the middle. Like, I'm going right for that cloud. Boom! Turn hard. Okay, right at that boom, because that's, by the time you turn, you're only human, you're not an instantaneous machine. It's going to take you 2 seconds to get around and to get it going. Eventually, you'll be able to proceed or envision when that turn should happen or anticipate that turn. But as soon as you feel that bump, nail it. Left or right, your call, doesn't matter. Most of your thermaling is going to be based on the previous thermal. My favorite. Lester, what do I call this? When you fly and you're in sync and you're in lift and you're in sync and you're in lift and you're in sync.
Kissing sisters.
Right. Because you're going through all the action, but there's no fun. Right? So what you want to do is get out of that. Half your circle is in lift and the other half is in sync. It's not helpful. So, anyway. So what you want to do is shift that circle. How do you shift the circle? When you get to here, fly straight, 2, 3, and go back at it. It's that 270 correction rule. So as soon as you hit that sync, come back to it. Count 1, 2, 3, and then go back to it, okay? So if you're half in, half out, you're not doing it right. Shift the center of the circle. So if you know that when you flew out here, there was sync, you have to visualize, I've got to fly 3 seconds backwards that way.
Right? So depending on your point of entry too, based on that model,
Yeah.
you might be flying through sync first before you get to lift, so don't bail.
Yeah.
Be honest, but the clouds are there, but I'm in sync, so this is because you're flying through sync first before you get to the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the sync that's hanging around the perimeter of a cloud, it's actually a good indicator of A, where the lift is not, but B, where the lift is. Because if you know the wind is up this way and you nailed the sync, well then you know mentally you have to shift it about 300 feet back that way. The better pilot is going to recognize the sync zone immediately and then come back 1, 2, 3, and then reestablish. Okay, so when you guys first nick it, you're like, oh, and you just start circling because I did feel a lift, but the better pilot's going to, nope, yeah. And so you just fly back a couple more seconds upwind. If you go to the right, it's the same thing. As soon as you hit the strong lift, count of 3, 1, 2, 3, turn. Eventually you're going to figure out the timing. Whatever feels right, you're going to nail it. And you get this in Condor every time because that's how they build the mathematical model for the program of the thermal, is that you have to hit sync first. And you see the cloud, it's going, and you see the red dots are going like this, the yellow dots are going like this, but first you get like nailed with sync, and that's the Condor model. And in Condor, they don't care which way the wind comes from, they surround every thermal with sync. Okay, because they're cheap bastards. So, lazy programmers, that's what I say.
Although he has insisted that the new Condor 3 has a much more sophisticated weather model now.
So, what you're going to find when you're flying into the wind towards a thermal is you know you're going to hit sync first. Speed up a little bit, get through it. And just because the sync is punishing, don't give up. Commit to it and get through to the other side because the lift will be there. If there's strong sync, it means there's strong lift on the other side. If you're like, oh, but I've only got like 300 more feet and then I got to turn back home and I've just used up 250 getting through the sync. Well, don't turn back because you're going to lose another 250. Go like that extra 50 foot into it and explore what you got there. And then you're going to find, and then again, 2, 3, turn. Okay, so always from the downwind side, you know you're going to hit sync when you're going into a thermal.
By the way, I have an MP3 of a burial rising for any of you who would like to, as I've done, modify your phone ringtone. My wife hates it. It's alarming.
Yeah. Someone's stealing the car. No, that's 10 knots, honey. On windy days, the thermals change shape. Okay, they streamline themselves a little bit, so they become an egg. And it's hard to visualize the egg until you've flown the egg. And so what you're going to find, you're going to try and treat it like a regular thermal, but it's not. You're going to fly through that, you're going to hit the sync, you're going to come back, 2, 3, and then you're going to hit the core. This region is pretty compressed. This region is a little bit tighter. or sorry, a little bit broader. So you're going to be flying a sort of egg-shaped core. And so I find I tend to do a few more adjustments on a windier day. Then I might flatten out 2-3, come back 2-3, flatten out 2-3, come back 2-3. And I'm trying to center around the core. So I'm doing this, I'm nailing my airspeed. But every time you flatten out, you're introducing a straighter section to your thermal. Okay, so roll in, take lift, roll in. As soon as that lift starts to get weak, tighten it up, as Charles said. Lift gets weak, tighten up. And then lift is starting to broaden out a bit. You can flatten out a little bit, but tighten up as soon as it starts to weaken a bit. So the idea is that you're going to be floating downwind with this thing, but you're always jinking and adjusting on a windy day. It's never a pure circle.
Here's another rule of thumb. If it's a windy day, the thermal is shaped like this. You are climbing in the thermal, but not as fast as a balloon would climb. So when you fall out, you will fall out the downwind side. If you lose the lift, try upwind as your best direction.
Yeah. And again, that's that whole slanted thermal picture that we had before. Remember that cylinder head with the tractor and the cloud? So again, you're going to fall out below. You're going to see everyone climbing away, and you're like, go back upwind and try and hit it again. The same thing coming from the downwind side. You're going to fly through that nasty valley of sink. You're going to get a rapid rise in sink. Rapid rise in lift. As soon as you get that rapid rise in lift, and when you feel it's at its max, then crank. Okay? And you're going to have to keep your circle very tight. So manage your speed. You might be starting to load up with G, and so you have to watch your speed. If you speed up, your diameter has to increase. The slower you go, the narrower the diameter. The faster you go, the broader the diameter. Okay, so you're always trying to manage. That's why you want to stay in between a certain speed range. Between 50 to 55 is for me, and it might be the same for you guys. I try not to get slower than that because bad things happen down there. I want full aileron control. I want my controls nice and crisp. I want a good average climb. And I want to feel what the air is doing, not what I'm doing. If there's other people with you flying the egg, watch them, because you'll see them flatten out, curl back in, flatten out, curl back in, flatten out, curl back in. And you're going to see everyone's doing that as you climb. It's kind of interesting that you guys choreograph this sort of thermal climb without actually talking to each other. You just kind of watch the guy, where did he go up, where did he go down? And so you're all adjusting that thermal as you're going up. When you build your daily model, how do you fly between thermals? So this one was a left-hand thermal, and he went around. When you leave the thermal, and you see that next cloud 10 to 15 kilometers away, and it's starting to build, that's my next thermal. And that's what you're doing. You're flying cloud to cloud, thermal to thermal. This is how you think when you're flying cross country. You're not just, oh, wow, the world's amazing under this cloud. As you're climbing, you're analyzing that with one eye like a chameleon. You're looking out there at the next one, planning your next 5, 10, 15 minutes. And so when you leave, because you already have this model set up in your mind for left-hand thermal, to your question, Emily, set the next one up as a left-hand thermal. Or if you say, you know what, I've flown left too much today, then set it up as a right-hand thermal and go to the other side of the cloud and set it up and in. In between the thermal, first you're going to have to fly through the sink, but in between, don't accept 3 knots down as, well, that's my cruise. Your vario is also for cruise. So don't just think it's there for thermals only. When you're flying, you know, your speed's controlled, your coordination's controlled, you're not introducing side loads to tweak the instruments or anything. You're flying nice. And so you're watching what the air is doing. If you have 2 ships flying side by side, as Jim said, one's going down, maybe the other's going up, or maybe one's going down faster than the other's going down. Well, the guy who's coming down should sneak in behind you because you're not dropping down as much. The air in between thermals is just as critical as the air in the thermal. So you want to keep your cruising as optimized as possible. And sometimes when you feel it, there's a thin filament of lift. Bless you, connecting the clouds aligned with the wind. It's not a streak, it's just a filament, and it's a microclimate situation. and it's only a wingspan wide. So sometimes when you're flying, you go a little bit out here, nope, you lost it. You come back here, I got it. I came back over here, I lost it. I come back in, I got it. And it's very thin, but you can ride that and watch, and you don't need to thermal as much in the next thermal. Maybe you only need to take 500 feet, and then you're gone again. So
I would argue that it's even more important than the thermal, because you spend 3 times as much cruising as you would normally.
yeah,
So trying to fly in the lines of energy where you're going to lose less height getting there, and learning that, and learning how much of a deviation do you make, when does it pay, and there's a great article, John Cochran, on deviations. These are things that are more advanced than you're at when you're looking for silver, but when you're looking for gold, you're going to be more tuned to that.
yeah. Even flying between thermals locally, it's a good habit to look at your variable, what it's showing, you know, and start to develop that little habit. It took me a long time to find these energy lines, and it wasn't until I was flying along with York down at Sosa when I was a member, and I was flying in a big twin Grove, and we did 150K. And that was a great day in a pig of a truck like the Twin Grove. Yeah, the last pig. That's like a furniture truck. Like, it doesn't do anything nicely. It's great and it's stable, but holy crow! Like, talk about pushing weight to get into a thermal. And there's Harry Tincake in the Jantar right beside me, and he's going down, and he's got me beat by at least 5 to 6 LD points, and I'm out climbing him. All he had to do was shift over. Well, how many more turns did he have to do to catch me in the next thermal? And that's less time I have to spend. And again, you know, Charles says it's advanced thinking, but be as disciplined and aware in the cruise as you are in the thermal. Which gets to how to set your McCready ring, how to cruise. This is sort of advanced stuff, but I'm going to put your toe into the deep end. So we're up here, and you got a bunch of choices. Your speed to fly ring, it just takes your polar and adjusts it on a dial. So the junior's got an outer dial around the variometer. It tells you what speed to fly. So the triangle is your best LD. So you could set it to 1 is regular Southern Ontario day. 2, when you set it to 2 knots, it's a really good day. I've got a stock photograph of it set at 6 knots, which is ridiculous. We never get that. I mean, you might get it in Texas or Australia. Our average thermal strength up here is not 6 knots. Anyway, so it tells you the speed to fly before you figure out what your optimum speed to fly is. I have a standard cruising speed that I take, and I don't crunch the numbers that religiously. I'm not like upper echelon contest pilot. I'm a middle of the pack guy. I like to get my tasks done. So I've got a comfortable cruising speed. But if the ceiling's higher and I've got good thermals throughout the day, then I can take a gamble that I can fly faster in between thermals, grab that next important fast thermal or strong thermal, and then get going again. If you set it too aggressively, you ignore the little lift in between, you land out. That's pilot 1. We call that a lawn dart. I've known lots of lawn darts, or Scud missiles. You know, they fired them and they land somewhere downstream. That's it, it's an unguided missile. 2 flew very aggressively, got that strong thermal, but they only got to there in the same amount of time as everyone else. So, sorry, 1 flew, took every thermal, every thermal, and they only ended up here the same amount of time. 2 landed out.
Silver distance.
Charles Silver just says, yeah, Mike scooting along in a blue thermal day on a 300. Number 3 flew a little bit more aggressively and reaches the thermal here. But now by the time they get up to here, 1 will join him. 4 flew a little bit more aggressively, hit the strong lift, and is already up and gone. This is out of Reichman's book. And the guy was a major whiz. But a lot of time has passed since then. 5 is the one that I've drawn in Microsoft Paint because it's just that great. Is that you bump the lift. You don't thermal in it. You slow down, spend time in it because it's only 1 meter per second. It's not worth the time to spend circling around. And then you get going again. Then you slow down. Then you get going again. Then you slow down. And now you're already here. You've hit the lift. And now you're already on your way Well, this guy is just starting to get up, and this guy is just starting at the very bottom. So you manage your working band and slow down in the lift to punch over and get going again. And you watch your crews. Okay, so there's an advantage to playing it a little bit smart. Once you know that you don't have to take every thermal, you only have to take the good thermals. That being said, as you get towards the bottom of your working band, take the next thermal. Regardless, weak, strong, whatever, take it. If you find something stronger and you have the height, move over, take that.
Paul McCready was a brilliant mathematician and a mediocre planner. Now he resolved that, and I only know the label, you guys didn't know what it is, quadratic equation, which is the speed polar. He resolved it into that rotating method. And we set the little triangle, which is your best climb speed at the 45-degree angle of bank. You set that at the thermal strength that you expect to achieve in the next thermal based on how's the sky unfolding in front of you and what have I done the last 3 thermals. If you get to the LX instrument, you hit the bottom, set them from the right bottom twice, it sets it for you, averages the last 3 thermals. So when you're in the top of those bands I've talked about, when you're in that working band, you set it for what you expect to receive out of the next thermal. When you get down towards the honey band, go down to half an inch. It really extends your range, your chance of hitting it. It improves. When you get down to survival mode, then you're flying at 0, McCready 0.
Yeah.
But the McCready will help you manage your speed, smooth it out. McCready, since the Ruckman days, most of the hot contest pilots have gone more towards what I call block speeds, which is, I will do it, but very gently. Every time you adjust the plane, you create drag. Every time you create drag, you lose energy. It's all about energy. Gravity's our engine, and our fuel is altitude, which is potential energy. So we don't want to burn extra fuel and have to stop at more gas stations. Smooth and use McCready as a guide.
Yeah.
The other thing is the more advanced instruments will have a setting where you go from climb to cruise. It gives you what's called netto. The instrument knows from you specified your aircraft, so it has the speed polar in it. And it knows from the airspeed you're going what your sink rate is. It subtracts that from your actual sink rate and gives you a reading of the sky outside that's pretty damn accurate.
Yeah.
And it's a way to know what the area of flying through is doing. And you can watch that and you'll see it on the very out. The Jantar's going to have really advanced piece of information on that by the time you get up to that. But you can start to use the mechanical McCready is where it started, and mediocre piloting one of the worlds.
I fly with 2 variables. One is total energy, so it's potential and kinetic, and the other one is a netto, so it siphons in a little bit of pitot, which cancels out the static from the tail end, and all it reads is what the air outside the aircraft is doing. So one will show a lower or a higher sink rate than the other, or climb rate than the other. And so I just want to know, what's the air mass doing, what am I doing? I thermal on this one, but I'm always scanning to see what's the air mass doing on the netto. One thing that screwed me up years ago in a contest was Palmerston. So we were flying over here, I get over to Palmerston, and I'm low. And the first thing I had to do, there's a big radio tower there, great, and I'm thermaling. And my entire mental model of the clouds in relationship to this, that, the other thing went right out the window. I was completely disoriented because the road grid changes by 45 degrees. When we fly up here, we used to fly and we look, oh, this is north, this is south, and subconsciously we're comparing what's happening at the cloud and the sun to the road grid. You get to out here where the grid changes direction, it screws up your mental picture. So really be cognizant of that. When you get closer to a turn point, if you've got a turn point down here somewhere, have a look ahead at that cloud. So at least you've got, the orientation of where the sun's hitting the cloud without the road going on below it. Give yourself a little bit of time to adjust to the change in the road grid, because the road grid does change around Lake Ontario. When I was at Palmerston, I became a member of the Fagawi tribe. I got lost, because you're circling around saying we're the Fagawi. Finally, I got high enough, I could see Lake Bellwood, I could see Lake Luther, like, oh, of course, I'm at Palmerston, because the map says I'm at Palmerston. Okay, great. There's Conestoga, there's Luther, there's Bellwood. Okay, now I know where I am. I'll hit upon it real quick, but no two lakes look the same. There's only a couple that have a dam at the west end, Conestoga and Woodstock, and you won't confuse the two of them unless you're me flying lower to the ground. So once you get down here, just be aware that the road grid changes direction. So keep looking at the clouds, the sun, and the wind, and just realize that the roads change direction, that's all. So the next things you're going to do, other than practicing thermally, you're going to learn how to log flights, Charles said. So complete your silver badge with the help of an OO. I'm an OO, official observer. Practice flying with a map. Check your height losses over distances. We're going to do landouts and cross-country flying, but this is good to get going. Practice using your audio vario. Practice or plan to stay up for over an hour. So you have an hour plus 10%. So 6 minutes of that is arrow tow. Take your hour and then come down. That's your C badge. Practice an actual or simulated off-field landing with an instructor. Most of you guys have done that with me already. Have a recap. Always hone your flying skills, your lookout skills. I can't stress that enough because you are going to get joined by other gliders. Review each flight using your IGC files on CU or the OLC and plan. Okay, so that's, we're going to do a refresher. I'm going to advise everyone to take a pee break, like a 15-minute lunch break, and have somebody, and then we'll come back. We're going to talk about landouts and field selection, and then the last one is how to actually fly some cross country. All right.